Hey everyone, guess what? Started from episode 1, now we're here. Episode 2 of the Everything is Amplified podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed the first one. I enjoyed making it. Quite a few technical hitches on the way to finishing it. But I managed to work it out in the end, so that's alright. First up today, I wanted to talk about my most recent review, which was obviously Drake, Nothing Was the Same. And I remember talking about on the podcast last time how I was just so stuck about what to say about it, but in the end, I pretty much got it all out what I wanted to say in that review, so pretty happy with that. I mean, there were moments where I was enjoying it, and there were moments where I wasn't, and I was kind of disappointed with this facade that he was putting on the whole time. I sort of wore thin on me. But the big news now is that he's got a new album or mixtape out right now, and so I guess if I had known, then I probably would have waited and reviewed that one first, but it was quite sudden, I've heard, and I haven't listened to it yet, so don't spoil it for me, but I have heard, murmurs. It was very polarizing. Some people really liked it, and some of the hardcore didn't, and so that's really interesting. So I'll definitely look at that soon, but obviously 2 Drake reviews in a row would probably be a little bit too much for everyone, I think. Although I did think the cover was kind of lame. I don't know, was he trying to be edgy? I really don't know anymore with the internet age and stuff, or whether people are trying to be edgy or they're, serious or whatever, or ironic, if you want to use another buzzword. But anyway, speaking of reviews, I do have to apologise for the lack of reviews in recent times. I think the last one must have been... It was 4th of February, so it was a little while ago. I've been kind of tied up with the work, and uni obviously starts quite soon. I've had quite a long break, and I haven't particularly been productive with it. I could have put out some more album reviews and better album reviews, although when I do come to doing these, I do have a lot of kind of difficulty deciding what to do for a number of reasons. The main one being is that there is a little bit of a divide between what I want to talk about and what people want to read a lot of the time, because I'll take you back to just before the Drake review and before the first podcast, the review of American football, self-titled, and that was something I really enjoyed, and I also really wanted to talk about the whole issue of when something just becomes huge on the internet, becomes a meme, for want of a better word. But not many of you were particularly interested in reading about that, and that's cool. I can't really sit you down and force you to read anything that I think is interesting, and that's why making suggestions is really important, because then it sort of bridges the gap between what I think I want to talk about and what you want to hear. But the other big thing when writing a review for me is that it's not just about the music itself, because I'm not like a trained musician or a trained music critic. I'm just someone who enjoys music, and so there's like a different dimension to the things that I like to talk about. It's not just about the technical quality of the music itself. There's also more things that I like to talk about, and often when you have an artist or an album or even a whole genre, you do have a lot of issues that accompany it, and that's something that I like to talk about, and that's why with the American football thing I wanted to go on and talk about memes and that kind of stuff, and Drake was interesting because he's sort of playing this character who's just not believable at all. He's kind of trying to shy away from his true self in order to fool all the haters, and so that was really interesting to talk about, and so that's why it's more difficult to find a review than you might think, just because I think that there needs to be something bigger that goes along with the music itself, so sort of supplements it. And I think if you did find me just doing a straight up kind of technical music review, it would be very short, because I'm, like I say, obviously not a trained music critic. I'm just someone who likes it, and I like to sort of look into the things around music, and so those are the big things for me. And I think you did see that initially in some of the early reviews, where I kind of picked albums where there wasn't much to talk about besides the album itself, and they were quite short, and I did find myself sort of grasping at straws as I sort of went along. And that's sort of where the metamorphosis came, and I tried to couple other things with the music, and that's where the style that I have now came from. And in short, what I'm trying to say is that suggestions are really important because it gives me new perspectives, new ideas, and I also get to learn from the people who read the blog what the top priority is for the next review. So with that all out of the way, that brings us round to talking about what I've been listening to lately. And you're probably going to hate me for saying this, but this will be the second time in a row on the podcast that I brought up Death Grips. Because as you may or may not know, they have dropped another album out of nowhere on everyone. Apparently it was lying around on the internet for quite some time before someone discovered it. And I say that using air quotes, of course. I mean, it's really hard to tell what's real and what's not when you're dealing with these guys. But I have to say that it always amazes me how Death Grips manage to infuriate their fans and yet manage to keep them excited for future releases. It just boggles my mind. I mean, people do spend tens of thousands of dollars and years figuring out how to market the way that Death Grips have just done, and the basic thesis statement for my thesis is all you've got to do is mess with your fans, and they've done that really well. So I'm not even mad anymore when Death Grips pull a fast one on me and they release something that's not Jenny Death. I mean, to be honest, I really don't care at the moment. I'm still kind of hung up on this new release Fashion Week, but also the part 1 of the powers that be. But when it comes to this new release, it's a really, really interesting entry into the Death Grips discography because it toys with a lot of different kinds of sounds, so you're not just getting the kind of the claustrophobic, incredibly paranoid level that is often on their records. You do also get quite crazy, off-the-wall sorts of sounds, but also you do get things that are just genuinely a little bit funky, and that's certainly a new experience for me. And even though it is an entirely instrumental album, I would almost suggest to people that are having a bit of difficulty getting into the band is to even start there, because it does introduce you to the kind of sound that Zach Hill and Flatlander have toyed with for a very long time, and that can kind of get you used to the more abrasive sounds on other records. And it's definitely just a little bit more friendly, if that makes sense. I mean, it's still crazy, it's still kind of claustrophobic in places, but it can be a bit fun, if that makes sense as well. I mean, I really can't say that I've had a lot of fun listening to a Death Grips record before. I've enjoyed it, but it's never been fun. So there you go, that's kind of what I think about that in brief. And I would definitely recommend it. It's free off their website, so I don't think you should really hesitate at all, and at the very least giving it a try, because it's a pretty nice smorgasbord of Death Grips sonic qualities. Also, I did mention the other thing that I have been listening to by them, and that is the first half of The Powers That Be. The second half, which everyone on the internet seems to be incredibly impatiently awaiting. But I'm still really hooked on part 1. It's just been amazing for me. And the thing is that's more amazing for me is that I first started listening to the band when that album came out, and I heard the songs on there, and I was just like, what even is this? And I just pretty much shut the computer right away. I was kind of like unsure if it was real music at all. But now I've taken that ride from beginning to end, and I've begun to see just how amazing this album is. It's still incredibly bizarre and esoteric, but you can see all of the seeds that the previous albums have planted sort of coming through, and it's pretty amazing. It takes all of the really positive elements that were on Government Plates, and it changes it and ratchets it up into this, what I want to call like a bizarre post-apocalyptic future rap, and it can get really chilling in places. The thing is that MC Wright is further to the front of this music than he ever was before, despite the fact that music of this bizarre quality could, and for some people may well, steal the show. But I think that Wright is still the star here, and he's really delivering some things that are like super, super chilling, and that's coming off like No Love Deep Web, where there was some pretty crazy stuff going on there. I mean, there was like, I just couldn't get over the part, it was so amazing and scary at the same time, where he's like talking about how he's in the graveyard and he's wiping his mother's ashes off his jeans, and about how, you know, if he killed himself he would end up quenching his hearse. Now that's a good line. And he also sort of gets into his normal voice range, like he stops yelling on a few of the tracks, and I think that is legitimately when things kind of get really spooky, is when MC Riders sort of come down from this high. He's still like really scary and kind of desperate. It's so cool. But I could continue on all day, but I think it's important for people to listen for themselves. And the best thing about Death Grips, well, maybe not the best thing, but they do put all of their music on YouTube. So even though the album's not out yet, you can still listen to it in full on their YouTube page. So I think I will put a link down there and you can go ahead and listen to it and tell me what you think. But also, to the people who are listening to me witter on about it and you're still not convinced, then I would implore you to at least try Fashion Week, because that will kind of put you in the right mindset for what it is that you're listening to.